To be at your lowest. For someone to have reached this point, a character had to have faced a situation in which they've been failed by the world or maybe even themselves. This is a pretty universal feeling, so it doesn't surprise me that writers often try to use this trope to explore an important character. I mean, it's one of the reasons we can relate to someone and contextualize all of their negative feelings. In a sense, it's a huge catalyst to writing a great flawed persona. And this is just one of the many facets of one of the best written characters of all time. Subarunatsky portrays this idea really well, showing us a point in his character where every promise has been broken, lifeline shattered, and his reason for existence gone. His character takes a turn and he ultimately feels like nothing is worth saving, not even his own self. But what happens after someone reaches this point? I think every realistic character has another side to them. Where there's a fall, there's also ascension. What's up internet, I'm Nikando, and welcome to a series I like to call ReZero Deep Dives, and today I want to explore the journey of when a main character hits rock bottom. A lot of stories love triumph. Some of the most amazing moments in fiction are a display of a main character winning or overcoming something that seems impossible, but I think triumph can be seen through a different lens. Instead of conquering a major fight or accomplishing something great, a lot of stories can show us something equally as entertaining. And while it might not be acknowledged as much, I find that getting over an internal complex can share the stage with many hype moments. And there are a ton of characters that exhibit this, one of them being Rhino Braun. He has so many amazing moments throughout AOT that show that he isn't the person that he's portrayed as. He eventually evolves into a character that deserves to live. And this ambivalence is represented by a literal split personality. I also think that My Hero Academia has a lot of great examples too. And in this case, a lot of people might choose Bakugo, but I would personally choose Endeavor. There are a lot of character traits that make him out to be a horrible person, but there are equally just enough to show that he's still human. These aspects show us a new kind of character, that of a paradoxical hero. These characters are well written because they lean into showing weakness and vulnerability with their flaws. And a lot of writers know that the fastest route to empathy is to break a character the way that life breaks us. A lot of the times, characters that are written at their lowest can often know us better than we know ourselves. Subarunatsky has one of the best depictions of being at your lowest because it takes this trope and expands it onto something much deeper than a simple idea. When exploring multiple sides of a flawed character, it can be easy to believe that acknowledging your flaws and then forgiving yourself is an effective way to create character development. When in reality, it's a much deeper process. When a character hits their lowest, there's also a process of healing. So let's talk about how ReZero explores this idea through this brand new lens. When it comes to a lot of character growth, so many people write it linearly, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Writers are always looking for ways to make their characters more interesting. And a lot of people don't watch anime or read manga for its realism, but we often forget that the people we are watching are human. So it can be really hard for a story to accurately portray realistic character development. Real people double back, contradict themselves, and relapse after breakthroughs, especially since growth needs to be compelling for a character's story arc. And having a character fall more than a single time can lead to a much more interesting conflict. This is done through relatability. Sometimes you might find yourself scrolling TikTok at 3 AM for the millionth time, knowing the stuff that you said would get done didn't. Trying to find a time to get a pump, starting a new story, working on your business, thinking about things you want to do, people you want to see, but never end up getting around to it. This is how many people's aspirations are crushed. And as we fail ourselves over and over again, we can lose the ability to dream, going through many unbearable loops that are caused by our own selves. My point being that we receive some kind of loss many times throughout life. And while this loss might affect us in different ways, how we perceive and accept loss can show us the framework for understanding the human psyche more. In true ReZero fashion, Subaru experiences several points of loss throughout the series, but nothing comes close to the loss he receives in The Outside of Madness, and it subverts typical loss without drawing too much attention to itself. The way Subaru handles this loss and the order in which he confronts it perfectly matches up with the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief throughout the next few episodes. When something significant is lost in someone's life, someone can go through one or more of these stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. The first stage Subaru exhibits is denial, a refusal to accept reality or personal responsibility. And I think Subaru checks all the boxes of denial in episode 15. After Subaru rushes to Roswell's mansion to find that everyone is slaughtered, he roams around the mansion shocked. Subaru cannot process the horror of what he just saw and immediately rejects the notion that any of this was due to his own mistakes. He makes consistent remarks saying, "This is wrong, this isn't what I wanted," and even goes as far to say, "This isn't even my fault." This is a desperate avoidance of accountability and classic denial. Subaru is psychologically buffering himself from the pain by refusing to accept his choices, like pretending to do all that he could, led to the tragedy at the mansion. And his denial soon gives way to anger. At the end of episode 15, we see that Subaru's shock visibly turns to anger at his own powerlessness. Having reset again, he arrives at Cruce's manor seeking help to prevent the disaster he just saw. But this meeting quickly fails. When Cruce questions Subaru's motives and ultimately refuses to help, Subaru snaps. He loses his calm and becomes aggressive, even saying that his true intent is to kill every single member of the witches' cult. He raises his voice and nearly attempts violence out of frustration. And after, Cruce straight up calls him out on it, saying that not even once has he said that he wanted to save Amelia, only to enact vengeance. Subaru's anger here has a lot of depth. Sure, he's angry at the witches' cult that keeps causing suffering, angry at the world's unfairness, but he's mostly angry at himself. Like most people under severe stress, he lashes out at others and himself, misdirecting pain and anger because it feels more controllable than guilt or fear. This stage is characterized by outbursts, blame, and irrational fury, all of which that Subaru continues to do to other characters throughout the next few episodes. Then, when someone tries to find a way to undo or mitigate a loss, they start to bargain. Subaru is terrified of the future that he knows is coming, and then swings into this stage by frantically trying to strike deals and find any help. Subaru goes to another royal candidate, Priscilla, where it's depicted in a way where Priscilla says that she would help him if he licks her foot. This is an illustration of how far his bargaining will go. Subaru ends up swallowing his pride and kneels to do it, an act showing how low Subaru has fallen. She ends up berating him, saying that Subaru has no loyalty or dignity beyond his own goals. In a sense, Subaru bargains away his honor only to be rejected once again. But nothing comes close to the depiction of bargaining he has with the final royal candidate, Anastasia. As Subaru tries to convince her to help him, Anastasia cunningly uses the conversation to extract information about Cruce's plans instead. And when Subaru realizes he's being manipulated, he erupts into anger once again. But by far the most important thing she tells him is that he doesn't even know how to negotiate properly, since he offered nothing of value beyond his own personal goals. No matter what Subaru has tried, nothing has worked, and something like this leads into a sense of hopelessness. And hopelessness is depicted by depression, coming to realize that it's all his fault. One of my favorite depictions of this is when he sees his reflection through the white whale's eye. Sure, he might be horrified of the white whale, but he's also horrified of his own reflection. He doesn't want to confront that version of Subaru Natsuki. After this confrontation, he ends up walking back to the mansion where he sees Amelia die once again. His emotional state collapses and even becomes suicidal. He tells Beatrice to just kill him and eventually screams for anyone to just kill him. Subaru is consumed by hopelessness, self-blame, and the desire to escape via death. And in this context, he's not talking about return by death. The series makes it really clear that Subaru has hit absolute rock bottom emotionally, leading him to conclude that there's nothing left but to give up. This is a moment truly showing what it's like to be at your lowest. And finally, we have our last stage. I really like the way that ReZero portrays acceptance because it's done through an amazing and beautifully executed scene. In episode 18, Subaru has lost all confidence and initially intends to abandon everything. Being at his lowest point, he asks Rem to run away with him to start a new life elsewhere, essentially attempting to flee from his problems once again. We see that Subaru acknowledges his flaws, but this isn't true acceptance yet, it's a form of surrender. And although I want to cover more of episode 18 in one of my next videos, it's through this heartfelt dialogue that Subaru undergoes a profound internal shift. He begins to accept himself for who he is and his current situation. It's this moment where he says he has to start from zero, where Subaru's psyche has moved into acceptance. He acknowledges the harsh truth, takes responsibility for it, and embraces the future going forward. Having a grand development like this is incredibly intriguing. Some of my favorite characters are built like this and around this idea. For example, if we make a character at their lowest through everyday struggles like running away from themselves, then it can really allow the audience to grasp onto that character even more. Even super simplistic character designs can be done great through relatability. I think Subaru executes so many things well, and we get it through subtle details and gestures that in turn make the series that much more enjoyable. Subaru's 5-stage journey shows us that even after the darkest despair, acceptance and hope are still achievable. Even in the end, Subaru learns to accept his failures, forgive himself, and confront reality with renewed courage. This cathartic character development grounded in a psychological model of grief is what makes the character at rock bottom so powerful, eventually giving us a profound lesson in emotional resilience wrapped in a fantasy tale.